the payback method when the payback period is not an integer. For example, let's say it's 2.4 years or 2.7 years, something like that. So let's jump into an example. Let's say that there's a firm that has a required payback period for this type of project of 3 years. Okay, so if the project hasn't recouped its initial investment within 3 years, then we're not going to accept that project, right? So the initial investment for this project, let's call it Project A, is $80,000. So we're going to forecast the cash flows for Project A, and if we don't get at least $80,000 within 3 years, if this project doesn't pay for itself, pay for that $80,000 within 3 years, if we can't break even, then we're going to reject Project A. So then the question is, we have to calculate a payback period of this project. How quickly does this project pay itself back? So we're going to look and we're going to see that in year 1, this project has cash flow of $30,000 that we're receiving. And then in year 2, it's $40,000. So we see that between year 1 and year 2, we're receiving a total of $70,000. Now, if you remember, we put up $80,000, so the project hasn't quite paid for itself yet. We're still $10,000 short. But when you look at year 3, we're receiving $50,000, and we were just $10,000 short. So we're definitely going to have this project pay itself back sometime during year 3. But if somebody were to ask you, what is the actual payback period? How quickly does this project pay itself back? We know that the answer is going to be somewhere between 2 and 3 years. The question is, how do we calculate how much? So we see that we are 10,000 short. We're 10,000 short coming into year 3. I got that by taking the 80,000 upfront invested minus the 70,000 we received in the first 2 years, right? So when we say, okay, let's look at this 50,000 we receive in year 3, what we're going to do is we're going to take the 10,000 we need to break even as of year 3. We're going to take that 10,000 and divide it by the 50,000 that we receive in year 3, okay? So that's going to give us 0.2. All right, if you take 10,000 divided by 50,000, that's 0.2. And so we're going to see that the actual payback period for this project is going to be 2.2 years. And so I got that by just saying, look, we know it's going to take these 2 years, right? And we know it's not going to take the full 3 years because we actually end up getting, was it 70, 120,000 if you add up all 3 years, right? So it's going to pay itself back sometime in this year. And when we're actually taking the 10,000 divided by 50,000, we're basically saying, okay, it's take about 1/5. It's take about 1/5 of the year. So you could even say 2 1/5 years, right? That's equivalent to saying 2.2, right? So if somebody were to ask you, if the manager says, look, how quickly does Project A pay itself back? We would say 2.2 years.
बॉय हैंड सैनिटाइजर आपका बेस्ट फ्रेंड गाड़ी में बैठते हुए खरीदारी के दौरान खाने से पहले रोजमर्रा के तहफ्फुज़ के लिए.
In this video, we're going to talk about the payback method, which is a means of evaluating investment opportunities and whether or not to accept a project. So the first step with the payback method is we're going to calculate the payback period. And what that means is we're calculating for a given investment how long it's going to take to recoup our investment. If we invest $100,000, how long is it going to take for this investment to pay us that $100,000 back? And then once we know what this payback period is, how quickly the project will pay for itself, then we can say, okay, step 2, we're going to accept the project if that payback period is for a shorter length of time than whatever happens to be our required time frame for our firm. So let's say, for example, that we require at our firm that all investments be paid back within 8 years. And then we calculate for an investment that the payback period is actually going to be 10 years. It'll take 10 years before we get our money back on this investment. Then we would reject the project because the payback period is actually longer than what the required time frame is for our firm. And the required time frame is up to your firm. It's up to your CEO or your manager. This is going to vary on a firm-by-firm basis. So let's jump into an example. It'll make it a little easier for you to understand. Let's say that you have a company that gives hot air balloon tours. And let's say that you're thinking about buying an additional balloon. You're saying, hey, you know what? I actually could get another balloon, and then I'd be able to give more tours and make more money. So then you say, well, how much would that cost to buy an additional balloon? I'm not talking about replacing the balloon you already have. I'm saying buy an additional one more. So let's say that was $300,000, right? So you can think of this $300,000 as an investment. You're making an investment in something, and you want to see, well, I'm expecting by investing this $300,000 to get an increase in sales. Right? I want to expect to be able to get more money from now having an extra balloon. So I want to know how quickly am I going to get my $300,000 back, right? So up front, I'm putting out $300,000. So here's negative $300,000. And if I were to add up all the cash flows I expect going forward, how soon is it that I'm going to get that $300,000 back? So first we need to know, well, what kind of sales increase do we expect? And in this case, let's say we estimate $75,000 a year. Now you could say, let's say for the next 10 years. So for the next 10 years, you're going to get $75,000 a year, increased sales because of buying this balloon for $300,000. And so for your company, you say, you know what? I don't want to make an investment unless it's going to pay for itself within 5 years. If it's not going to pay for itself within 5 years, I don't think it's a good investment. I don't want to do it. So let's kind of map out the cash flows here, and it'll make it a little bit easier for you to understand. Well, that's not a straight line. Sorry about that. So, well, that's not very straight either, but let's go with it. So you've got times 0. You're putting in negative $300,000, right? And I'll put 300K to make it shorter. So at the end, you say it has to be, I'm going to be getting the string here of 75K, 75K, right? And this is actually going to go for 10 years. This is going to be 10 times that it's going to actually go beyond this year 5. But we need to know within this time frame right here between times 0, which is just the beginning, and year 5, will we have collected $300,000? Will we have earned an extra $300,000 in sales to at least break even, to get that $300,000 back, right? Now you might say, well, we're going to do this for 10 years, so just take 10 times 75,000, that's $750,000. That's more than 300,000, right? So we should, well, that's not how it works, right? We want to know, we're saying with payback, forget what happens after year 5, right? We just want to know before year 5, before we get to that point, will we have made back our $300,000 investment? So what we can do is just say, okay, well, let's just take the cost of the investment, which is going to be $300,000. That's the cost of the balloon. Now we take that and we divide it by the incremental sales that we're experiencing each year. So our annual increase in sales is $75,000. So we divide 300,000 by 75,000, and that is going to give us 4. So what does